everyone! Welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm going to be reacting to your pet enclosures. This is my 1,000 subscribers special, so thank you so much for 1,000 subscribers. That means a lot. It's crazy that I've grown this far in just a short amount of time, so I really appreciate it. Before we begin, I thought I'd say a quick disclaimer. I'm not claiming to be an expert. Obviously, my care is not perfect. I'm just going to be offering some constructive criticism. My intention is definitely not to come off as rude or mean in any way, so I apologize if I do. That's not what I intend. So with that, I have my laptop and let's look at some submissions. So our first submission is for a male Syrian named Mickey. He lives in a 775 square inch cage. They use paper bedding mixed with linen bedding from Bunny, and they have 7 to 10 inches. The wheel is 12 inches. For enrichment, there is moss, cork, cocoa fiber, and sprays. So I wasn't sure what the linen bedding was or if it was safe, but I looked it up and it looks like it's some type of paper-based bedding. Obviously, if it's like cloth, then that's not safe, but I don't think that's what it is. You have a good bedding depth, your wheel size is good, your cage size is good. Personally, I'm not a big fan of wired cages, but that's just because of the limited base. You found a way to raise the base so you can add more bedding, so that's really great. Good job for doing that. I also don't like wired cages because there is the risk of them climbing the bars and falling off and injuring themselves. I would say possibly consider getting another cage. However, that's mostly just my personal opinion. I'm not a big fan of wired cages, so if he's not doing any of that and he's doing well in this cage, then that is fine. I really like all the sprays and natural items in this cage. It looks very nice and very enriching. Yeah, I really don't have any suggestions for this cage, besides just the wired cages not being my favorite. So I'm going to rate this cage a 9.5 out of 10, so thank you so much for submitting. Next submission is for another male Syrian named Mr.Teddy. He lives in a 500 square inch bin cage. There is 6 inches of paper bedding, and the wheel size is 10 inches. The enrichment is a DIY treehouse, sand bath, bendable bridge, DIY chew toy, and DIY food toy. So looking at this cage, it is too small for a Syrian. The minimum for Syrian in North America is 600 square inches, so I recommend upgrading his cage. I recommend having at least 8 inches of bedding for a Syrian. 10 inches or above is preferable. Also, the wheel size is just under the minimum. The minimum for a Syrian is 11-inch wheel or above. Some smaller Syrians can fit okay on a 10-inch, but I would really just recommend upgrading it to make sure that his back isn't bending. So now looking at the cage, it's great that you have a sand bath, and that DIY treehouse is super cool. That's cool that you built that. I do notice that you use a food bowl. I recommend scatter feeding. That is a great and easy way to provide enrichment. Also, looking at the food, it looks like it is low in variety. You want to make sure that your food is not just all like pellets or all the same thing. So I would recommend changing your seed mix and scattering it around his cage. I would also recommend adding some sprays and forage and another hideout once you upgrade, as well as some maybe cork logs or tunnels and another substrate as well. So you're off to a good start. Everything, unfortunately, is just a bit below the minimum. So I rate this cage a 5 out of 10. So thank you so much for submitting. Our next submission is for a winter white dwarf male named Oreo. He has the Cozy Wow hamster cage, which is about 500 square inches. The bedding depth is 7 inches and they use a paper bedding. He has an 8-inch wheel. Enrichment, there is chew sticks, herbs, and a DIY forage toy. So while this cage is above the United States bare minimum, I would recommend upgrading, especially because it does have all these platforms. That makes it kind of hard to change up the setup and add a lot of different enrichment for him. So I would recommend upgrading your cage. It looks like in the back corner you have a sand bath, which is good. Your wheel size is big enough, and you do have a good depth of bedding for a dwarf. I would probably add a couple more inches, since 7 inches is on the lower end for bedding. It's great that you've provided a variety of chews, and I see you have a burrow starter. I like that you've added herbs. So overall, I would just say upgrade your cage. Definitely add some more hideouts because it doesn't look like he has any hideouts. So thank you so much for submitting. I'm going to rate this cage a 5 out of 10. Our next cage is for a male Syrian. He lives in a 819 square inch bin. His wheel is 8 inches. They say, I know it's too small and I'm getting a Night Angel wheel soon. He has paper-based bedding. which is 8 to 9 inches deep. For enrichment, there is boredom breakers and they scatter feed. There is also sprays like millet and oat. So looking at this cage, I will say it looks like the 50-gallon bin, which is about 550 to 580 square inches, depending on how deep your bedding is. So make sure you are not measuring your bin cage from the top and that you are measuring from the bedding level, because bins taper up. So the higher up you measure, the larger the bin will be. But looking at this, I don't think it is 819 square inches. I could be wrong, but I have not been able to find a bin that big. So the first thing I noticed is this hideout on the second level. I would recommend removing that because it does look like one of the edible ones. Those are not safe, so I would remove that. It also looks like your sit bath is a little on the small side, so I'd probably upgrade that. I also noticed this water bottle. It is taking up a lot of space, so I would say replace that with like a hideout or something, maybe another substrate. And I would recommend doing a water bowl because I prefer those personally. And then obviously upgrade your wheel, which you already said you were doing. So overall, I would recommend upgrading your cage, changing out the water bottle for something smaller because it does take up quite a bit of space, upgrading your wheel, adding more bedding, removing the unsafe hide, and then just crowding the cage a little bit more. So thank you so much for submitting. I rate this cage a 5 out of 10. Our next cage is for a male Syrian hamster. He lives in the paw hut, which is about 1,070 square inches. He has 10 to 12 inches of paper bedding mixed with hay, an 11-inch wooden wheel, and enrichment is forage, sprays, multi-chamber hide, a variety of hideouts, chews, burrow starters, rocks, and Chipsy Classic dig dish, as well as grapevine wood and a watch box. So this cage looks really nice. I like how you've added hay on top of the bedding. It makes it look very nice and natural. You also have a good sized sand bath, and I like that you've added another substrate for him. You have a great depth of bedding as well, and the cage is a very good size. Overall, I don't really have any suggestions. I would probably just say to remove this rope chew, because if he does decide to chew the rope, that could become unsafe. And then also maybe add another hideout to this far side of the cage, because that does look a little bit bare. You could also maybe add like a tunnel or something. So overall, I rate this a 10 out of 10. I really don't have any suggestions besides removing that chew and maybe adding another hide or a tunnel. So thank you so much for submitting. Our next cage is for a female Syrian named Clover. She lives in the large Night Angel cage, which is 930 square inches. She has 10 plus inches of paper bedding, a 12-inch Night Angel wheel, and lots of different substrates like cocoa soil, aspen, cork granules, cocoa husk, and a sand bath. She also has dried flowers, a variety of sprays and forage, and lots of hideouts. I love the setup. It kind of reminds me of like a spring setup. I think it's really pretty. I like how it looks open, but it's still crowded, if that makes sense. And I like all the Night Angel products and the variety of sprays and herbs. These tiny mushrooms are also super cute. So yeah, the setup looks very enriching. I don't really have any suggestions for this cage. It's very pretty, and this photo of your hamster is so pretty as well. I don't know how you got such a good photo of your hamster, but I rate this cage a 10 out of 10, so thank you so much for submitting. Our next cage is for a female dwarf hamster named Sassafras, or Sassy for short. She has a DIY cage made of a TV stand, and her enclosure is 661 square inches. She has between 6 and 8 inches of paper bedding. They also have aspen, moss, sand, and aspen chips. They use flowers and sprays. So it's very cool that you DIY'd your own cage. I think that looks very nice. And the setup does look enriching. I like the amount of sprays and hides. The grapevine wood is very pretty as well. I think my only suggestion for this cage would be to make sure that the lighting is not on 24/7, because having the lighting right near her cage can cause her sleep pattern to be disrupted. Besides that, I don't think I have any suggestions, so I'm going to rate this a 9.5 out of 10, so thank you so much for submitting. So our next cage is for a female robo named Miso. She has the IKEA Detolf, which is 950 square inches, 11 inches of paper and aspen bedding, an 8-inch wheel, The enrichment are sprays, cork logs, branches, cocoa fiber, cork substrate, and a multi-chamber hide. So this cage is a really good size for a robo. I love how crowded it is and how much enrichment there is for her. There's a lot for her to do and a lot of hiding areas, which is great for a robo. I love this large branch in the cage. Really my only suggestion would be that the sand bath is a bit small for a robo in my opinion. Especially since you have the IKEA detolf, I would recommend doing part of the cage sand, since that would give her a really large sand area, since robos do come from desert areas. But that would really be my only suggestion for this cage. This looks really nice, a really beautiful setup. So I'm gonna rate this a 9.5 out of 10, so thank you so much for submitting. Our next cage is for a male Syrian named Alfredo. He also lives in the IKEA detolf, which is 950 square inches. He has 3 to 7 inches of paper bedding. He has a 12-inch wheel. So there is only one photo of the cage, but from what I can tell, it looks like a good setup. IKEA detolfs aren't really the best for Syrians because of the limited height and the limited width. I would definitely recommend upgrading the bedding because 7 inches is a bit low for a Syrian. You want to make sure you have 8 inches or above. 10 inches or above is preferable. So it looks like an enriching setup. My only suggestion would be to add more bedding. And then make sure he's not showing any boredom behaviors in this cage, because the IKEA detolf can be a bit awkward for a Syrian and kind of hard to set up. So maybe consider getting a different cage, but as long as he's happy in this, then that's fine. So I'm going to rate this a 9 out of 10, so thank you so much for submitting. Okay, so now we move on to the last couple hamster cages. Okay, so this one is from Everything Hammy. They have a long-haired Syrian male named Noodle. He has an 816 square inch cage. He has 8 inches of paper bedding, an 11-inch wooden wheel. He has grapevine wood, hideouts, sand bath, 2 water sources, dig boxes, and bendy bridges, a wooden tunnel, and a variety of chews. Looking at this cage, it looks like a very nice setup. It's great that you have multiple water sources for him to choose from. And it's good that you said you are careful with the carrot tunnel, because that would be a concern, you know, just to make sure he doesn't eat too much of that. My only suggestion would maybe to be add a couple more inches of bedding, because 10 inches or above is preferable for a Syrian. But besides that, this cage looks really nice, so I'm going to rate this a 9.5 out of 10. So great job, and thank you for submitting. The last hamster cage is for a male dwarf named Eric. He lives in the IKEA detolf, which is 950 square inches. He has 9 inches of paper bedding, a 10-inch wheel, 2 sand baths, sprays, forage, enrichment toys, scatter feeding, other substrates, a multi-chamber hideout, and a water bottle and bowl. So this cage looks very nice. You have a good sized wheel and a good amount of bedding. I like that you've provided 2 water sources, and I really like all the enrichment and different amount of hideouts and substrates. Really my only suggestion would be this popsicle dig box can become unsafe because he could potentially get his feet caught in the gaps between the popsicle sticks. So I would say remove that. But really that is my only suggestion. This is a really great cage. I'm gonna rate this a 10 out of 10, so thank you so much for submitting. So our last couple cages or enclosures are actually not for hamsters. I don't have a lot of experience with other small pets, just kind of what I've watched on YouTube, you know. So I don't know if I'll be able to give the best advice, but I will try my best. So let's take a look. So first we're gonna start off with a male mouse named Gizmo. He lives in a 384 square inch bin. They say that is the minimum for 3 mice. They say it looks pretty boring at the top, but I promise there's a whole other world underneath, including a really cool burrow. They have a lot of tunnels and bendy bridges. He has an 8-inch wheel. He has 3 to 8 inches of paper bedding. And they say due to his age, he's over a year, I don't feel comfortable getting him neutered to be able to live with other mice, but I try my best to give him the best life possible. So I totally understand that. Obviously mice would ideally live together, but if he is older, then you don't want to put him through that, so I totally understand. So I will say, you said this is the minimum for 3 mice, but to me this seems very small for just 1 mouse. So I would make sure you're not getting that information from a pet store or for lab mice or anything like that. But I would recommend upgrading your cage because this does look very small and like you're not able to fit a whole lot of enrichment in here for him. You did say he has a good amount of bedding and he does have cool burrows, which I can see. However, he is mostly going to be sleeping down there, so you still want to make sure he has a lot of enrichment on the surface. You have a good size wheel. I would recommend once you upgrade to add some more hideouts, maybe a couple more tunnels. You could also add some type of substrate for him to dig around in, and maybe some climbing toys as well because mice are climbers. Also make sure you have chew toys so that he can wear down his teeth. And then I would also recommend putting the wheel up on a platform so that it does not get buried in the bedding and he can still use it. So yeah, I'm going to rate this cage a 3 out of 10. So thank you for submitting. So our very last enclosure is for a rabbit. So they say her name is Vitnos and her cage is around 12 inches. I'm assuming you're meaning like 12 square feet because this is definitely bigger than 12 inches. So looking at the cage, it looks like a decent size. I like that you've used like an old pet store cage as a litter box. Now I will say, I'm not sure if this was taken like mid-clean or something because I do see some hay remnants in the litter box, but I don't see a hay pile anywhere. So I would make sure that you are feeding your rabbit hay 24/7. Also add like a blanket or some fleece on the floor so that if she decides to do zoomies that she has some traction and she can run around without slipping. Also add like a hideout and some chew toys and enrichment toys for her because this does look very bare. So I'd make sure that she has some stuff to do and enjoy as well as a hideout to sleep in and something cozy to lay on. So thank you for submitting. I'm going to rate your cage a 3 out of 10. So that concludes this video. Again, thank you so much for watching and thank you so much for 1,000 subscribers. Again, hopefully I didn't come off as mean or rude in the video. That was not my intention. And hopefully I gave some helpful advice. So again, thank you so much and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!